Hi there, my name is Greg Snell. I work as a professional videographer and drone pilot with UAV Coach. Welcome back to our 5-part series on the Skydio 2. Now for this video, we've come down to beautiful South Africa to test how this bad boy stacks up against other DJI models. Let's get started. All right, we've left our studio behind and we've come out to this absolute drone paradise here in South Africa. And what we're gonna cover in this video is the motion tracking of the Skydio 2 versus the active track of DJI. We're then gonna talk about the distance and the quality of the transmission signal between your mobile device and the different drones while flying in real time. Then I wanna touch on the 4K video quality of both the Skydio 2 and DJI models. And then finally, we're gonna share our thoughts and opinions and conclusions on how the Skydio 2 stacks up against other DJI models and which one could work best for you. It is windy out here and I am tired. We just got back from the first test here on this road behind me, and that probably wasn't the best choice this morning to run up and down a very steep dirt road, but still it's a good excuse to get some exercise in while making these videos. And what we've been doing here is testing the subject tracking of both the DJI and the Skydio 2. Now the DJI model that I have is the Mavic 2 Pro, and I've had this for about 3 years now. I absolutely love it. I'm very familiar with the drone, whereas the Skydio 2 I've had for just over a month and I'm getting much more familiar with it. However, it's still relatively new and I've been using it a lot to make these videos and testing it, and every single time that I do, I get more, familiar with what it can do and what its capabilities are. The bread and butter of this drone, the Skydio 2, is subject tracking both people and vehicles, as well as its obstacle avoidance. Now we go into a lot more detail about the autonomous obstacle avoidance system of the Skydio 2 in the last video, so if you're interested in learning more about that, check out the link in the description below. But it's really interesting that it prioritizes its obstacle avoidance over everything else. So even in this big wide open environment, the drone is still processing everything it sees, and I think it's kind of reacting in an inconsistent manner, which makes it very difficult as the operator and as an editor, as well as a video editor, to be able to consistently rely on that footage. So you've got like this pulsing that kind of happens where the drone comes towards the subject and then moves back, towards and back, and then it sort of speeds up when it changes direction as to where it's going to track, and that can create a couple seconds of really dynamic, awesome looking footage, but at the same time those inconsistencies are what make it more unreliable and difficult for me as an editor and a solo content creator. Now the Mavic 2 Pro, on the other hand, my initial thoughts right here in the field are that it did a very good job of having sort of a stable flight pattern where it was consistently tracking me, especially going down the hill, and it was much slower. It didn't really have as much like kind of jerky movements. However, when it was coming back up the hill, it really didn't do a very good job of being able to determine the obstacles around it, especially as the hill got higher and the drone was kind of getting lower and lower and lower at that level, and eventually it almost hit a rock and then lost connection with me because it stopped itself. So the obstacle avoidance of the DJI did a great job in this environment, but when it did that, it then lost the subject. So I had to kind of turn it around, fly it back to me manually, and then re-engage the active track. So those are just kind of my thoughts from the field. Take it as you will, learn what you will from these real world, real life experiences. And now it is time to test out the distance and the quality of that transmission between your mobile device and the drone while flying in real time. And look at this. We have a wild South African. You must be quiet. You must be quiet. Okay, come on. And we are at a winery, a giant vineyard in the middle of the Franschhoek Valley, South Africa. Perfect place to fly the drones. Look at this scenery behind me. And that was a really, really cool test to see like sort of how far we could go. And the DJI just completely outperforms the Skydio 2 when it comes to distance away from the pilot or the operator. You know, I don't really ever want to go beyond line of sight with my DJI Mavic, but in this case, you know, it's so wide open that when I'm 300 to 500 meters away, it's very, very difficult to even see the drone, but I know that it's just across the valley, right? With the Skydio 2, that's basically impossible. It's really difficult to get it, you know, further away than a couple hundred meters max. So that's a big difference that I've seen here in these vineyards, is just the amount of space you can take between the two. All right, good morning from a beautiful sunrise location here on the South African coast. We've gone from the mountains and the desert of the Cederberg to a short section in the vineyards and now down here on the coast. And what I wanted to test out this morning is that distance and quality of the transmission signal between your mobile device and the drone while flying. And it's been really, really interesting here. We're in a very wide open environment, as you can see from the footage, and there's a very easy line of sight along the coast, especially going down towards this big beach. And I've been really enjoying the Skydio 2, honestly. I've got it up in the air right now, and I'm utilizing the controller once again because the controller does give you much more distance in regard to the connection with the drone than just your mobile phone. And then the beacon, which we mentioned in another video, gives you even more distance, which is nice. But for this morning, like testing it out with the DJI, the Mavic 2 Pro, there's just a huge difference between the two. It's really, really obvious. The Skydio 2 at around 250 meters to about 300 meters, the quality of the image on your phone starts to really deteriorate. It gets very, very bad, and it's very jerky. And if you're not a confident drone pilot, that's like kind of, you know, a big warning sign. It's like, okay, you've definitely gone too far. And then when it does lose connection, boom, you get that black and white, you know, TV kind of gray screen, which for most people, if you're a drone pilot yourself, you probably know that's like the screen of death. And it's very scary when, you know, it just goes completely gray and you don't know where you are or what's happening. But luckily, with a bit of knowledge and confidence, you know that the drone will return to its launch point. And funny enough, that's exactly what it did. I noticed when I was setting up this tripod to take this video that I put the controller down on the ground, and even just right on the rocks, it lost connection with the drone, and the drone was only about 100 meters, a bit more, 140 meters away. And it automatically started coming back here. And it was only, you know, 145 meters away, which I found to be really, really unique and kind of quite cool. I didn't have to do anything. No, I didn't press any buttons. It just came right back and surprised me. So that was pretty cool. But in regard to the actual distance that you're able to fly, I know that I don't want to be flying beyond line of sight anyway, so, you know, in that regard, it's fine that it can only really go about 300 meters before you lose it. With the controller, I mean, with the app, it's probably far less, to be quite honest. So if you're just doing activities and you want to film yourself, you don't need to be 300 meters away. But in regard to this beautiful landscape and capturing that cinematic 4K footage, you want to be able to fly along the coast. So losing that connection in a relatively short distance is, in my opinion, not really that great. morning. It is just past sunrise and we've moved to a farm location here in South Africa, which is just another absolute drone paradise and a really cool landscape to contrast against the other places that we've seen in this video. So normally at 5:30 in the morning, sunrise light, absolutely perfect time to be getting some stunning drone footage for your video projects. I would throw up the Mavic 2 Pro immediately and just get the shots that I'm looking for, and you're gonna see those in just a second. But in the case of this video, I really wanted to test out the cinematic 4K quality of both the drones, and a lot of the footage that you've seen already so far is all shot in 4K 30 or 4K 60, so you are already seeing sort of the highest quality that both drones can record. But I thought for this example, you know, naturally my first impression or reaction was to throw the Mavic up in the air, but because we're here, I want to start with the Skydio. So I'm gonna put the Skydio 2 up in the air right now, and you can see how the cinematic 4K quality looks around these beautiful eucalyptus gum trees in this stunning location. And then after that, we'll switch to the Mavic, both shooting in 4K 30, and you be the judge of what looks better. Alright, we've got the Skydio up in the air, and you be the judge as to how you think the 4K 30 is looking. I know that this drone can record in 4K 60, but for comparison's sake, I'm just shooting 4K 30 so that we can have the same look with the Mavic 2 Pro once I get this back down. But I wanted to cut in on myself real quick because I'm at about 330 meters away, and I'm starting to get that really kind of pixelated look on my phone. So the transmission signal between the Skydio 2 and the remote controller and the app on my phone has its limit at around 300 meters. That's what I'm finding. And we saw the same thing yesterday in Hermanus on the coast of South Africa in another wide open environment just like this. And I've also noticed that if something's blocking it, or if I've got the controller on the ground like we did yesterday on the stone, then it absolutely loses the connection. So you need to be, you know, sort of facing within line of sight of the drone. And there we go. I just lost the connection as we're talking, so I'm gonna have to try and fly back towards us. It says connection regained, boom, right there. So it's right around that 330 mark, you know, anywhere between probably 300 to 350 is what you have to be aware of if you're looking to fly this drone. All right, and good morning once again. We're back on the ground after those two incredible flights. The Skydio 2 did a great job around these eucalyptus trees. Even I tried to fly through this little gap, and it got a little bit stuck there at the end, which we covered in our second video when it comes to the obstacle avoidance system of the drone. But eventually it did decide, yes, it's clear and flew right through, and I think that footage is gonna look really cool. Then we got the Mavic 2 Pro up in the air, which I'm again very comfortable with, and just boom, right away I was able to get some incredible footage and trying to kind of replicate where I was flying with the Skydio 2 so that we can compare both of those 4K 30 video quality side by side. So it's 4K resolution, 30 frames per second from both the Skydio 2 and the Mavic 2 Pro. Now, I think that like my first impression right here in the moment, on location, in the field, is that it's so important to have a good quality transmission signal between the drone and yourself as the operator on your mobile device so that you can see what you're filming. In cinematic filmmaking and trying to get the best quality footage that you can for your video projects, you need to be able to have that sense of awareness of where you are with the drone. And with the DJI Mavic 2 Pro and any DJI model that I've flown, it seems to have a very, very good connection, and you can fly quite far before you start to lose that resolution between the drone and your mobile device. And the transmission signal is quite strong, so it makes it a lot easier to fly into some really tight, cool looking spaces and get that shot, get that bird's eye view. Whereas with the Skydio 2, I noticed that anything past around 200 meters, especially from 250 to 350, the signal starts to get really bad and it's very difficult to see what the drone sees, therefore making it harder to know what you're filming. Now, I guess the benefit of the Skydio 2 is that the obstacle avoidance system is so good that it's not going to hit anything. I have 100% confidence that when I'm filming with the Skydio 2, flying and I lose that transmission signal, I'm not sure where I am, it's not going to hit anything. It's very good at avoiding obstacles and coming back when that connection is lost. However, it gives me less confidence and reliability that the shot that I'm getting is good if I can't really see what's on the phone. So I think the DJI models kind of win out there when it comes to cinematic filmmaking, not necessarily in the quality of the picture, but just being able to see what it is that you're filming and the transmission signal between you and the drone. So yeah, that kind of goes back to that distance and quality that we talked about in Hermanus, but I think the two kind of go hand in hand because the quality of the footage I'm sure is going to look great from both drones, but if you can't see what you're filming, it makes it a lot harder to capture that stuff in the field. All right, and it is our final day here in South Africa. We are in Port Elizabeth, where I will jump on a flight heading back home. And this is the perfect opportunity to wrap this video and share with you my final thoughts and conclusions on how the Skydio 2 stacks up against other DJI models. Now, I say other DJI models, but really in this video, all I tested was the Mavic 2 Pro, which is my personal drone and the one that I am by far the most familiar with. And I think for a lot of you watching this, you're probably also very familiar with DJI drones, whether you have the Mavic Mini or the Mini 2 or even the Mavic 3, which recently was released. They're all relatively similar on how it feels operating the drone through the app on your mobile device, however it is that you're piloting that DJI model. So the sort of general information that I shared in this video, I believe will go across all different DJI models. However, I was only able really to stack up the Skydio 2 versus the Mavic 2 Pro. And the takeaways from that are, I believe that they stack up really well against one another, but there are a couple of instances where the DJI Mavic 2 Pro really outshines the Skydio 2, and then one specific area where the Skydio 2 really outpaces the DJI models. So let's start with the Mavic 2 Pro, because from a cinematic pilot, videographer perspective, the Mavic 2 Pro is just absolutely incredible. It's much smoother, it's much easier to operate, even though the Skydio 2 does come with a controller as a separate purchase. You have to buy the controller separately to be able to control it like you would the DJI models. For me, it's just the DJI seems to be a much more consistent and smooth flight and operating experience for me as the pilot, which enables me to get much better quality footage, in my opinion. So it really outshines outshines the Skydio 2 when it comes to just that piloting experience. However, the 4K video is very similar. The Skydio 2's camera is a very, very high quality given the fact that the drone really is built for autonomous flight. So the actual camera quality of both drones is quite good. So from my videographer perspective, either one of the video quality at 4K 30 is great. So that's cool. Another place where the DJI sort of outshines the Skydio 2 is when it comes to the transmission signal between your mobile device and the drone. It is by far way better on the Mavic 2 Pro than it is with the Skydio 2. Now, I've operated the Skydio 2 with just the phone, only utilizing the phone to connect with the drone, and then also the controller, which does give you a little bit more distance. And from the research that I've done, apparently the beacon, which is another accessory that you can buy separately from this Skydio package, gives you even further distance, but it still was not very reliable at all. And a number of times during the production of making this video, I had a really bad transmission between my phone and the drone, which makes it extremely difficult to fly. Whereas DJI is almost always really, really good unless you're being blocked by a giant concrete building or if you are just way too far beyond visual line of sight, which you don't want to be. So that's another one of the places where the DJI really shines. Now, where the Skydio takes the cake is with obstacle avoidance and autonomous flight. The Skydio 2's obstacle avoidance is stunning. As you probably already know from watching this video, or if you've seen the last video where we delve into a lot more detail on the autonomous obstacle avoidance system, it's just like next level. The drone is so intelligent and so smart when it's scanning its 3D environment with those 6 cameras that I trusted 100% not to run into anything, which is crazy. I mean, I've been flying drones for like 5+ years, and I've never really had the same confidence as I do with the Skydio 2 of the drones not crashing. So that's a very nice feeling, and it would be extremely good in a situation like this where we're kind of, you know, surrounded by trees, but also when you're tracking a moving object that is possibly yourself. Like I tested it riding a mountain bike at that same place where we did the motion tracking test in this video, and it did a phenomenal job of holding my myself as the subject while I was riding pretty fast down these dirt tracks back in the Cedarburg Mountains. So that was really cool to see, and that is where the Skydio does definitely outshine the DJI models. Now the active track is pretty good with DJI, so don't let that, you know, change your decision on to which drone you want to buy. The tracking, the subject tracking on both drones is really quite good, but it's the autonomous obstacle avoidance of the Skydio 2 that really takes the cake. So I'm gonna dig into a little bit more of the overall conclusions in the next video, but for this one, when it comes to you know, which one stacks up against the other, I think that everything that we filmed and you've seen in this video should give you a really good idea of what drone will work best for you. So be sure to check out the comments below and leave any comments or your thoughts and opinions, and we will be sure to answer you there. Also, be sure to check out the other videos linked in the description that are part of this series that we've created on the Skydio 2. And from everybody here at the UAV Coach team, we're wishing you blue skies and safe flying. Ooh, baby, let's go. Recording? Yeah, all right.